You think I'm kidding, but I'm gonna call CM Punk right now. Man. I can't show you his number.
Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on those notifications. And once you're done, leave a comment down below and I just might end up responding. With how rigidly tight Vincent Kennedy McMahon has the lackeys enforcing the script as of late, it's honestly sort of surprising that anything these days isn't happening according to the plan. That being said, holy hell has there been a lot of moments that didn't go according to the plan. Just flip through watch WWE's videos if you'd like proof. With so many unscripted moments being out there, let's see if we can't find a couple you haven't heard to death over the last few years. I'm D Wicked from Watch WWE, and here's 10 of the most shocking WWE moments that definitely were not in the plan books. Plan books? I don't think that's a word. Number 10, JBL's drunken antics. Let's start with a moment that actually enhanced what was going on instead of taking away from it, because as you may already know, a decent amount of unscripted moments aren't exactly the greatest things to ever happen. You know, the screw job, The Undertaker getting set on fire twice, every injury ever. These aren't exactly positives, but hey, every now and then you're going to stumble onto a pipe bomb. JBL's drunken buffoonery definitely didn't make the waves that CM Punk did back in 2011, but him pounding back bottles at ECW's One Night Stand event in 2005 only to get the verbal smackdown from Paul Heyman ended up leading to one of the greatest insults of all time.
The only reason you were WWE champion for a year is because Triple H didn't want to work Tuesday!
Number 9, the dry ice. Triple H is known for plenty of extravagant things. He literally made Evolution, and that was their entire gimmick. One of the most noteworthy uses of his $1 million checks has to be the grandiose WrestleMania entrances that he's now become infamous for. Giant skulls, motorcycle police chase scenes, big bulking leather jackets. He is truly living out the dad fantasy come Mania season each year. Maybe it's because when he toned it down and kept it fairly simple, he ended up in more pain than he would have been come the end of the actual match. At WrestleMania 29, the game stepped up to play through a big shouldered skeleton and ended up with dry ice jumping straight onto his body.
I start walking down the ramp and I realize, man, I am sizzling. And I can feel myself sizzling, and I look down and I have dry ice all stuck to my stomach.
Number 8, Mark Henry and the padlock. During an episode of SmackDown, Batista was running dominant inside a steel cage before somebody gonna get their wig split. That classic hit. And suddenly Mark Henry appeared. He came down to the ring and tried pulling on different parts of the steel cage before gunning down that padlocked steel chain, the only thing keeping him from walking straight through the door. Now, it was supposed to be gimmicked so that Mark could very easily pull the door open, but whoever was in charge actually put a real padlock on that door. A real steel chain Mark Henry had to bust through. Mark ended up spending over 1.5 minutes awkwardly putting all of his strength into trying to actually snap a steel chain in half. And then he did.
Here tonight. Sure is. Mark Henry, no matter what, is having a problem. He can't get in there.
Number 7, Mickie's fingers. It's safe to say that throughout the 2000s, Trish Stratus versus Mickie James stands alone as not only probably the best, but also one of the boldest storylines in all of women's wrestling, with Mickie James playing pseudo-lesbian stalker and somehow still getting babyface reactions, because of course she did. This was put in front of wrestling fans. Oh look, women on women. Well, Mickie took that angle a little bit too far according to backstage after getting a grab at Trish's downstairs business and then throwing up the licky V-finger business. Reportedly, Vince was pissed. Pissed enough to chew Mickie out backstage, but no, don't worry, not in the same way that Mickie wanted to chew Trish out. That's a good line.
Trish looking for Stratus Baxter here. Wait a minute! Is there a naked?
Number 6, The Rock drops his glasses. From fingertips to eyeballs, from Mickey to Mickles, and from stratisfaction to electrocution. Where else are you ever gonna hear a call like that? Next up, we have got The Rock losing his iconic glasses during one of his ever-present catchphrases. Because he's The Rock, the simple act of dropping glasses suddenly turned into a world-stopping moment, and because Mick Foley was also in the ring, it ended up turning into one of the best moments in wrestling history as the Jolly Man decided to pick him up for Rocky, which somehow leads to one of the funniest off-the-cuff remarks I've ever heard.
What the
Number 5, the APA beat the hell out of the PE. Public Enemy had quite the ironic tag team name when they switched over from ECW to WWF, because when it came to their locker room, the new one at least, they really were Public Enemy number 1. The team came over cocky as hell, bragging up their accomplishments and letting everyone in the room know they were the big bosses backstage, which wasn't exactly the truth. WWF was no ECW in the locker room, and it was much more respect-oriented. And when they failed to show that respect, Vince McMahon sent Bradshaw and Farouk out there to beat the respect into him and paint it as realistically as a match as possible. And you know what? They did a pretty good job.
It's unbelievable.
Watch out! Oh. Johnny Grunge is out cold.
Public Enemy.
Number 4, Cena gets busted open. Shortly after losing his year-long anticipated matchup with The Rock at WrestleMania 28, John Cena immediately entered a feud with the returning Brock Lesnar, and holy hell was this one explosive. Brock came back for the first time after almost a decade out of the company and was shoehorned right into a Cena feud after primarily being a UFC fighter for a good few years by that point, which meant this feud was obviously going to be vicious. And it was. Extreme Rules was the stipulation picked for the match after all, but what WWE wasn't too keen on was Cena getting busted open before that match and bleeding from the nose during the build-up for said match during a very, very PG peak in the PG era.
Cena with that smirk on his face. I guarantee you he wants some more of this.
Number 3, Sheamus accidentally wins the WWE Championship. Alright, realistically this could have made the conspiracy theory video, but I only recalled this one recently, so deal with it. It may or may not have been a botch when Sheamus won his first ever WWE title. Back in 2009, Sheamus was shot out the card at a nearly unprecedented level, getting a WWE title tables match against John Cena at TLC not very long after that main roster debut, and well, let's just show the footage. Basically, the ending was definitely botched, as Cena was planning a superplex to put Sheamus through the table, and he ended up really shaky, really unable to pull any move off, and then at the same moment, Sheamus drops off the top rope as Cena very obviously launches himself backwards, and the table breaks in a strange way that the tables usually aren't meant to break, which kind of helps this theory. The reaction by Sheamus, and then really the fact that he only held the title for 2 months in a very awkwardly booked era of the title's history, definitely gives off the vibe that he just wasn't the planned winner going into the match. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm pretty sure Cena was supposed to walk out with that belt.
WWE Champion, the Celtic Warrior, Sheamus!
Ladies and gentlemen, I am stunned.
Number 2, Austin slips out of the Rumble. Stone Cold Steve Austin may have the single most impressive history when it comes to the Royal Rumble, being the only man to currently have 3 wins in the match's concept, but he also has one of the most embarrassing eliminations from the match. During the 1996 matchup, just a year before his back-to-back victories, Austin would find himself getting clotheslined by Fatu and accidentally going over the top rope. Austin was supposed to last a lot longer in the matchup, something of a star-making performance for the then ringmaster. Please never forget that that was a thing. But between himself and Fatu, there was just so much oil between them that Austin legitimately couldn't hang on to the ropes, and he ended up going over and out of the match, supposedly about 15 minutes before he was supposed to be eliminated.
A lot of people here, McMahon, they think that the British Bulldog is the uncrowned champion. Oh, and they think that the British Bulldog is the uncrowned champion.
You are out of here!
And number 1, The Rock calls CM Punk. And for a long time, if WWE could have taken any one of these moments back, I would bet bottom dollar it'd have been this one. In February of 2017, Dwayne was doing some filming for his upcoming page-based movie, Fighting With My Family, and asked the post-Raw crowd to do some different cheers, some boos, some chants, etc. Of course, when you ask a crowd to chant, they're gonna start chanting for CM Punk. This is just natural progression. This continued on for a good while and led to Rocky pulling out his phone and actually calling the dude in front of a live WWE audience. This does not happen. Unfortunately, he didn't answer in time, but it's still one hell of a moment, and one that Vince McMahon was supposedly pretty pissed about. But Vince, I got bad news for you. It's The Rock. What are you gonna do to The Rock?
You think I'm kidding, but I'm gonna call CM Punk right now, man. I can't show you his number.
And those are 10 shocking WWE moments that weren't playing. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments down below. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel, notifications, that bell.